Now, if you're interested in starting and operating a cannabis business, chances are that you probably run into some difficulty when opening up a bank account for your company. Now, there are several reasons and a whole variety of reasons of why banks won't take your cannabis money, and for good reason. If they take your dirty cannabis money, then it could put their entire portfolio of assets at risk. So just ask yourself, would you risk hundreds of billions of dollars in assets just to take a cannabis business operator's small $2.3 million deposit? I mean, probably not. Just the risk is just way too high. And this is both frustrating and dangerous for you as a cannabis business owner because you're dealing with a lot of cash, and that opens up the door to fraud, bookkeeping mistakes, and potential security issues. Now, while states have legalized cannabis, which is federally illegal, it has created this kind of murky area of how policies are actually being guided and enforced. So, real quick, let me give you some background on how we actually got to this gray area in cannabis banking. But before I do, I need to let you know that the information contained in this video is meant for guidance purposes only and not as professional legal or tax advice. And further, it does not give personalized legal, tax, investment, or any business advice in general. So with that out of the way, let's hop right into the history of cannabis banking. So when the US states started to actually legalize medical marijuana, US Attorney General James M. Cole issued a memo directing US attorneys on how to handle the new state laws. The problem has and continues to be that cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. However, with US states passing laws to legalize it within their respective territories, the problem of infringement of voters and state rights comes into play. So by issuing this memo, which is popularly known as the Cole Memo, or referred to as the Cole Memo, Attorney General Cole addressed the issues that stem from having state laws that legalize federally illegal substances. Basically, the memo actually indicates to prosecutors and that the law should be enforced and focus federal funds only on those cannabis businesses and operators that are in conflict with the state law. So if you're playing within the bounds of the state law, you should be okay by the Cole Memo. And this memo played a vital role and represented a significant shift within the federal government in reassuring how to use federal funds when enforcing the law under the Controlled Substances Act. So you're probably wondering, well, where do we go from here and how do we navigate this gray area? Well, I sat down with Derek Davis, the CEO of GreenGrowth CPAs, to get a few tips on how to successfully navigate cannabis business banking. Now, it's important to note that Derek has worked with dozens of companies, probably even more than that by this point, and help them understand this nascent industry's complex regulations. So let's get into some of his recommendations and help you navigate this murky area. Now first, have a discrete incorporation name, right? We see many clients who have incorporated their business when they come to us under names like the Dank Cannabis or Dank Greens or Delicious Weed. And it's like, when you have those names, they kind of sound cool, but those are brands and they're not great from a banking perspective. It's like red flags everywhere, okay? So be sure to be mindful of the naming convention of your company and how it might be interpreted by these banks and regulatory industries. So opening a bank account for your cannabis business isn't strictly legal, but it does fall into, again, this gray area that the banks may overlook if you open a general business account under a discrete name. So over the last year, more and more banks have been open to working with cannabis businesses, which that's a great plus. So make it easy as possible for a bank to abide by these federal banking regulations by using a name that doesn't raise any red flags. So consider using like your initials or some kind of general name and then tack on the word industries or company, corporation, group, limited, just something does not have the word cannabis or weed or 420 in the name, all right? Next, you should open 2 different bank accounts to keep your cash flow under control. Now, the first account can be dedicated to all the cash deposits coming in from the business, while the second account can be dedicated to paying your credit card bills and any other business expenses. This second account it works without a problem, and it looks like normal money in, normal money out. towards paying any normal operating expenses and taking care of transactions. However, it's important to recognize that it's not unlikely that that cash deposit account is going to be flagged by the bank for the high rate of cash deposits and the high amount of cash deposits. So keep that in mind. That's why we're making two accounts to separate things out. And if this happens, it's possible that the bank will file what they call an SAR, which stands for Suspicious Activity Report. And you should be prepared to show all the documentation of your permits from the state and the city, your licenses, and expense reports if asked for this. Now, the most important part of maintaining the two separate accounts is not to mix your business and personal expenses. This is a big no-no in business accounting, so don't do that. Your receipts have to be kept in absolute perfect order, all right? And this is why it's important to work with an accountant who can help you build infrastructure and policies to help create and maintain a bulletproof paper trail. All right, this is really, really important, so don't commingle your funds. Third is build a relationship with your bankers. Now, don't think of banking as a simple transaction and just some money and a thing you have to do, but instead look at it as a partnership or a relationship with the people that are operating these businesses, okay? The bank manager, the tellers, and everybody in between, because personal relationships go a long way in banking, especially when it comes to people who actually write those SARs, which are suspicious activity reports, right? These reports are submitted to Financial Crimes Network, the FinCEN, and this can increase the banking costs for those banks that actually serve your cannabis business accounts. It's just a mess for everybody around. No one likes doing paperwork. So usually when those costs go up, a bank is simply just gonna pass them down onto the clients of the cannabis-based business, or even generally to every other client. So that means you have to pay a premium for your bank account. So build a good relationship and minimize the cost in the future, even potentially minimizing the headache altogether of an SAR. Again, this whole process of the SAR can be avoided by establishing a personal relationship, again, with the tellers, the managers, the security guard, and everybody in between. Provide them with enough confidence in you and your business by being as transparent as possible with your financial stability, the permits, the licenses, and overall legitimacy of you as a business owner. Remember, cannabis regulations on banks were initially set up to stop money laundering and major drug cartels, and not to stop small legal cannabis businesses. So by proving you're a contributing member of the community, of the banking community, of your city's community, and keeping your financials above board with your bank, you may be able to avoid someone actually filing a report that can actually drain your bank account and all this mess that comes around, okay? It's just a big, big headache that you just want to avoid, so focus on the relationship. Finally, update the name on your credit card statement. So in the state of California, a business can actually register under what they call a fictitious business name when applying for a commercial cannabis business license, all right? And when that business name is something innocuous, you want to do that, it helps to avoid any scrutiny on your credit card statements from anybody that sees it, whether it's vendors or clients. You want to be sure that all the name and contact information shows up for the company on the statements, that they don't mention anything that has to do with cannabis or weed or 420, okay? Again, keep it clean, all right? Because when a customer and clients purchase something from your cannabis business or want to engage with your cannabis business services, right, their bank gets access to your merchant name and everything else that comes along with that. So you don't want them to scan it by some machine or whatever that's going to be and find the keyword cannabis or weed, right? So if there's disputes and anything goes on, you don't want anyone to draw a red flag. So hopefully, if the customer sees all this general information, the client will, be more likely to reach out to you directly instead of the bank, who actually may terminate or call another bank, because banks are friends. They will call each other and say, hey, there's a company called Weed Company 420 that's charging our client, $55. You should look into this account. So, minimize that risk and make a name that's actually, not something that has weed in it. Now, this is not a foolproof setup, but just some considerations to get you up and going forward. So, successfully navigating cannabis business banking means being smart and resourceful on how you actually bank. So, spend the time and the effort to actually legitimize your cannabis business, keep it compliant with local and state laws, pay all your taxes, keep your account straight, and get to know your bankers and grow your chances of navigating this gray area very successfully. And don't forget, this is not a transaction. It's a relationship that you're building from day one all the way until you exit out of this industry. Now, hopefully this video has brought you some value and gave you some context onto how cannabis banking actually is working in this gray area. So if you actually need some help with cannabis banking or some finance needs or accounting, then get in touch with GreenGrowth CPAs by reaching out to us via our website at greengrowthcpas.com or give us a call at 800-674-9050. Have a great day and we'll talk to you soon.